Welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving deep into how we as Christians face those inevitable life challenges.
Absolutely.
And to help us with that, we're looking at a text called God's Test. Will you fall or stand strong in faith?
You know, it's fascinating how this text approaches challenges.
Yeah,
It doesn't present them as like divine punishments,
right.
but almost like tools,
Yeah,
tools that refine our faith.
I see where you're going with that.
Like that analogy of fire purifying gold.
Yeah, I've heard that one a lot.
It's a classic.
It is. But I think for some of us, it can be hard to really grasp what that means practically.
For sure.
Like, does that mean we should just smile and pretend everything's fine when things are tough?
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
It's more about understanding that hardship can lead to something better.
Hmm.
Think about gold being purified in a fire.
Okay.
The impurities are burned away, right?
Right.
What you're left with is something stronger and more valuable.
Okay. I'm starting to see the connection.
And it's the same with our faith.
So those challenges, those trials, they actually help us let go of things that are holding us back spiritually.
Exactly. Things like fear or doubt or maybe even priorities that are a bit out of whack.
So what we're left with is a faith that can withstand the heat.
A more resilient faith.
Yes. It makes you think about how we build physical strength, too.
Right.
You don't get stronger by avoiding exercise.
Absolutely not.
You're like,
You need the resistance.
it's that resistance that leads to growth.
I love that analogy.
So it's not about enjoying the struggle itself,
Right.
but recognizing that it can actually lead to positive change.
Precisely. Think back to a time when you went through something truly difficult.
Okay,
It probably wasn't fun in the moment,
definitely not.
but looking back, did you learn something? Did you maybe discover an inner strength you didn't know you had?
It's funny how those tough times can reveal our potential.
Trials have a way of doing that.
They do, but if we're being honest, sometimes those trials feel impossible,
Oh, I know that feeling.
like you just want to give up. And the text actually uses some pretty intense examples from the Bible to illustrate that point.
It does. It talks about Abraham and Job and even Jesus himself facing some really difficult situations.
These are figures who are often held up as examples of unwavering faith.
Yeah, but the text makes it clear that they weren't superhuman.
Right, they weren't just robots programmed to obey.
Not at all. They experienced doubt and fear just like we do.
And I think that makes their stories even more powerful.
It does. Because it means they weren't exempt from the struggles of being human,
But they still found a way to hold on to their faith.
even in those darkest moments.
Ah.
Which gives us hope that maybe we can too,
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about the purpose of trials,
right?
and we've seen how they played out in the lives of these incredible biblical figures.
Yep.
But the text doesn't stop there.
Oh no, it gets practical.
It actually gives us some tools to help us stand strong when facing our own challenges.
It lays out 3 key strategies:
Okay, I'm ready.
trusting God's promises, engaging in unceasing prayer, and finding strength in community.
3 powerful tools.
Absolutely. Let's start with trusting God's promises.
Okay. The text points to Isaiah 41:10,
Oh, a great verse.
where it says, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand."
Powerful words.
They are incredibly reassuring, but I think a lot of people struggle with how to actually apply them.
Yeah, I get that.
It's one thing to read them.
But another to really believe them.
Exactly. Especially when life gets hard.
It takes a conscious choice,
What do you mean?
to shift our focus from the problem to the one who made the promise.
So it's not about ignoring the problem,
No, not at all.
but about choosing to believe that God is bigger than our circumstances.
That he's still in control even when it feels like everything's falling apart.
And remembering those promises is like having a lifeline.
Yes, a lifeline to hold on to when you're being tossed around by the waves.
It's that reminder that even though things are tough,
Right.
God is still with us. He still loves us.
And he's still working everything together for our good.
So trusting God's promises means remembering who He is,
His character, his faithfulness, his love.
even when we can't see the way forward.
It's about choosing to believe that he's got us, even when we don't feel it.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about the second strategy?
Unceasing prayer.
Does that mean we're supposed to be on our knees 24/7?
Uh-huh. I wish it were that simple.
Because most of us have jobs, families, other responsibilities.
Real life gets in the way sometimes.
It does. So what does unceasing prayer actually look like?
It's less about being in a constant state of formal prayer
Okay.
and more about cultivating an ongoing dialogue with God.
Like a constant conversation.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about bringing him our requests, of course,
Sure.
but also expressing our gratitude, our doubts, even our anger,
So it's not about trying to bargain with God,
or bombard him with a laundry list of requests.
but about staying connected.
Keeping that line of communication open no matter what we're going through.
That makes prayer feel a lot more approachable.
It should be. It's a relationship, not a ritual.
I like that. The text actually mentions Philippians 4.67.
Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God.
And it says that when we do that, we experience peace.
Even in the midst of chaos.
So prayer isn't just about asking for things.
Right.
It's about deepening our relationship with God
Finding comfort and strength in his presence.
and experiencing that peace that passes all understanding.
You got it. Okay, ready for strategy number 3.
Hit me with it.
Finding strength in a godly community.
That's a good one, especially when we're going through tough times.
It's so easy to isolate ourselves when we're struggling.
It is. It's like we want to withdraw and lick our wounds.
But the text suggests that community is essential during those times.
It's like having a support system.
Exactly. People who will encourage us, challenge us, and support us in our faith.
They remind us of God's truth when we're tempted to doubt,
They lift us up when we fall.
and they celebrate our victories with us.
It's like having a spiritual pick-through.
I love that analogy, but finding that kind of community can be tough.
You can.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who's feeling isolated?
Well, first I'd say be intentional about seeking out those connections.
Good advice.
It might mean joining a small group at church,
Mm-hmm.
volunteering in your community, or even just reaching out to a friend who shares your faith.
It's about being proactive and open to receiving support.
So we're not waiting for someone to rescue us
No, we're actively building those connections.
and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable.
You weren't meant to walk this journey alone.
That's so true. Okay, so we've got trusting God's promises,
Yes.
engaging in unceasing prayer,
Yes.
and finding strength in community.
3 powerful tools to help us stand firm when facing trials.
But the text doesn't just focus on the struggle, does it?
Nope. There's a reward for passing the test.
There
It
is.
talks about the crown of life being given to those who persevere under trial.
That's from James 1.12.
It is. And it connects this idea of reward with the growth that comes through hardship.
So no pain, no gain.
Uh-huh. In a way, yes. But in this case, the gain is spiritual maturity, inner peace, wisdom, stronger relationships.
All those intangible but incredibly valuable qualities.
That make us better people.
It's like the author of this text shares their own personal struggles
They do.
and how they learned to rely on God's grace, especially when they felt weak.
They reference 2 Corinthians 12.9, where Paul says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness."
It's a powerful reminder that we don't have to be strong all the time.
We can come to God just as we are.
And speaking of powerful reminders, the text ends with this amazing passage from Psalm 46.1-3.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
It's all about finding refuge in God, even when the world feels like it's falling apart.
it paints such a vivid picture. Do you want to read it for us?
I'd love for you to...
Okay, here it is. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear though the earth give way, and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging.
Beautiful.
There's just something so calming and reassuring about those words.
What strikes me is that it doesn't just offer comfort.
Hmm.
It also calls us to action.
Okay.
It invites us to actively choose faith over fear.
To trust in God's presence and power, even when our circumstances seem to contradict that truth.
Exactly. It's about anchoring ourselves to his promises even when the storms are raging around us.
So this isn't about denying the reality of our struggles,
Right.
but about believing that God is bigger than them.
That he's still in control and that he's going to see us through.
It's about holding on to that anchor of faith.
That's the essence of it, isn't it? It's not about the absence of challenges, but about the presence of God even in the midst of them.
That's such a good reminder. Let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've talked about so far. Think about the trials you might be facing right now.
How does this idea of viewing challenges as opportunities for growth change your perspective?
What promises from God can you cling to in this season?
And how can you lean into your faith community for support?
We'll be back in a bit to explore even more insights from God's test. Will you fall or stand strong in faith?
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
You know, before we paused there, we were talking about Psalm 46.
Yeah, that image of finding strength in God even when everything feels like it's falling apart.
Right. It's so powerful.
It is, those first few verses especially.
The earth giving way, mountains falling into the sea.
It's like chaos on a massive scale.
It is. But then there's this incredible sense of peace.
Because the psalmist understands that God is their refuge.
Their unshakable foundation.
Like an anchor in the midst of a storm.
Exactly. And that anchor is our faith.
It's a choice we make.
To trust in God's control, even when everything around us seems out of control.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
The purpose of trials, those inspiring examples from the Bible.
Those practical steps for navigating tough times with faith.
But how does all of this apply to us right now, you know?
In our everyday lives.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because we all face those unique challenges.
We do. And what I love about this text is that it doesn't offer some kind of one-size-fits-all answer.
Yeah, it's not a formula.
It's more of an invitation to take these truths.
And apply them to our own specific situation.
Because it's in those everyday moments.
Where faith becomes less of a concept and more of a lived reality.
I love that. It's like we're being challenged to move beyond just reading about faith.
And actually live it out.
Let it inform our decisions, our relationships, our whole approach to life.
So instead of seeing our struggles as some kind of random event,
or even punishment,
we can start to see them as opportunities for growth.
As invitations to draw closer to God.
It's a total shift in perspective.
And that shift can be so freeing.
Because instead of feeling like a victim of our circumstances,
we can choose to see them as part of a bigger story.
A story that God is writing in and through our lives.
And that changes everything.
It does. It's like we're not just reacting to what life throws at us.
But we're actively participating in the process.
Trusting that God is using these experiences to shape us and refine us.
And trust that unwavering belief in God's goodness.
That's what gives us the strength to stand firm even when everything feels shaky.
That's our foundation.
It is. But what about those times when the trials just feel overwhelming?
Yeah, when the pain is so intense.
It's hard to see any good coming from it.
I think it's important to acknowledge those feelings.
So be honest about the pain.
Because even in the Bible, we see examples of people grieving and wrestling with difficult emotions.
Like Jesus weeping at the death of his friend Lazarus.
Exactly. So it's not about pretending everything's okay.
Or putting on a happy face when you're hurting.
It's about being real with God and with yourself.
And knowing that God can handle our messy emotions.
Our pain, our anger, our doubts.
He's not afraid of them.
Not at all. He meets us right where we are.
With love and grace and strength.
It's amazing to think about how God uses our weaknesses to show his power.
Like that verse from 2 Corinthians.
My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness.
It's a reminder that we don't have to be strong all the time.
We can surrender our weaknesses to God and let him work through us.
It's like saying, God, I can't do this on my own, but I know you can.
And in that surrender, we open ourselves up to his transformative power.
And that's where we start to see the true reward of facing trials.
It's not about earning a prize or a trophy,
but about becoming more like Christ.
Developing those qualities of perseverance, faith, and resilience.
Those things that shape us into the people he created us to be. So it's not just about surviving the trial.
Right. It's about allowing it to transform us.
To refine us, to make us more like him.
And as we go through this process, we begin to understand that our identity isn't found in our circumstances or our successes.
Or even our failures.
It's found in who we are in Christ.
That changes everything.
It does. It frees us from the pressure of having to perform.
Or earn God's love.
Because we realize that his love is a gift.
Freely given.
Not something we have to earn or deserve.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's one thing you want our listeners to take away?
Remember this. No matter what challenges you're facing, you are not alone. God is with you every step of the way.
Offering his strength, his guidance, and his unwavering love.
And when you lean into his presence
and trust in his promises,
even the most daunting trials can become opportunities for extraordinary growth. It's all about perspective, isn't it? Like we were saying, those trials, those tough times, they can actually be opportunities for growth.
Yeah, instead of just getting knocked down by them,
we can rise above
and become stronger,
more resilient in our faith.
So instead of asking, why me, when things go wrong,
right,
we can start asking, okay, what is God trying to teach me through this?
Or even, how can I use this experience to grow?
It's like totally reframing the situation.
Turning a setback into a setup for something greater.
I love that, and it makes those practical steps we talked about even more important.
Absolutely. trusting God's promises,
Leaning into prayer.
finding that strength in community.
They become like our lifelines when the storms hit.
They do. And as we put those things into practice, we start to see God's hand at work.
It's not just about him rescuing us from the trial,
It's about him using it to shape us.
to refine us and ultimately draw us closer to him.
That's the real beauty of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not about avoiding hardship at all costs.
Right.
It's about letting God use those experiences to mold us.
To deepen our faith and make us more like Christ.
It's a process, a journey,
And it's definitely not always easy.
but it's worth it.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into God's test, where you fall or stand strong in faith.
What a powerful title.
It is. What's one final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I'd say just remember this simple truth. No matter what challenges you're facing, you're not alone.
God is with you every step of the way.
He offers his strength, his guidance, and his unwavering love.
And when we choose to lean into his presence,
And trust in his promises,
even those really tough trials can become opportunities for amazing growth.
growth that shapes us into the people he created us to be.
That's a powerful reminder. So as you go about your week, I encourage you to think back on those stories we discussed.
From Abraham to Job to even Jesus himself.
They all faced immense challenges.
Yet their faith remains strong.
And it's their example that inspires us to keep going, even when things get tough.
It's a reminder that we're part of something bigger than ourselves
That we have a God who loves us unconditionally,
and who is always working for our good.
even when we can't see it.
So hold on to that truth
Let it give you hope and strength.
as you face your own trials and know that God is with you every step of the way.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into God's test. Will you fall or stand strong in faith? We hope you found it encouraging and insightful, and that you'll carry these truths with you as you continue on your journey of faith.
Blessings to you all.